The United Nations has sounded a warning to Horn of African countries to act now to prevent a desert locust catastrophe. With the rainy season fast approaching, countries in the region are in a race against time to tackle the invasion amidst ongoing humanitarian challenges. The infestation in Kenya is the worst in 70 years, while Somalia and Ethiopia are experiencing their worst outbreaks in 25 years. Putting crop production, food security and millions of life at risk. Swarms crossed into Uganda overnight, and Tanzania and South Sudan are now on the watch list. We look at the proactive action South Africa can take and what this plague means for food security in Africa. For more on this, I'm joined on the line by AgriSA Risk Manager Andrea Campher. Very good evening and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you so much. So the origin of this desert locust began in 2018 when two consecutive hurricanes brought heavy rains to the East African parts of Africa. These locusts were a result of strong winds in these regions. The current regions which were affected, as you mentioned, is Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, and now there is news that it's going to be spreading to Tanzania. The current diagnosis of the situation is that this is indeed a massive biosecurity crisis. These countries are already food insecure. Yes, they have limited resources to mitigate and to manage these crises, and to worsen the scenario, planting season is also coming up. In short, this is a humanitarian and food crisis, to be honest. The UN has recently declared that emergency funding is needed for these countries to manage the risk.
Okay, so we'll talk about the emergency funding in just a moment, whom should be involved and how, but you're talking about limited resources to deal with this. Locusts are the world's oldest and most destructive migratory pests. The question is, what have we learned from those biblical times when we've heard about locust plagues?
Well, I must say, the question is, how would South Africa deal with it? And, Africa is dealing it on their own way and seeking funding from the United Nations. But I must say, with all honesty, that South Africa is more than prepared to deal with this type of biosecurity threat than the eastern parts of Africa. The probability of occurrence of this experience of this type of disaster is very low, and we have mitigation plans in place to manage these impacts. We have world-class pesticides, crop sprayers, and equipment to stop the spread of this desert locust should strong winds blow this locust this side of the southern parts of Africa.
So you say South Africa can deal with it, but I still go back to what have we learned from, locust plague from as far back as biblical? It's an ancient problem.
No, it is definitely an ancient problem, and with the climatic conditions in the eastern parts of Africa, I must say it's very favorable for these locusts now to spread and to spread and eat all the crops. So what we have learned is to effectively mitigate or to manage this. So I must say, out of organized agricultural point of view, if something like this would happen in South Africa, everybody will take hands together. Your pesticide companies, farmers, etc., government will take hands and address this because we have the equipment, we have the pesticides. So I think in the 1980s there was also one news about locusts in South Africa, or there was a disaster this side, and then we handled it. So I am more than 100% confident that we are able, yes.
So give us a picture of how this would unfold. An average swarm contains up to 40 million insects, which can travel up to 150 kilometers in a single day, and they can devour enough food to feed 34 million people within that time. So that means that even if we are prepared, we are vulnerable.
We are vulnerable. However, as winds carry these locusts to certain parts, they fly with the wind. Not against the wind. So if wind would come down from the eastern parts of Africa, then we will experience this. But there is studies done that we don't need to be alarmed at this stage, and that we will monitor the situation, I must say.
All right. So you say farmers will be involved, pesticides will be employed. I'm again asking the question, how does this play itself out? Pesticides, for instance, as much as they're necessary, they're not something that are encouraged. They poison people, especially if we're talking about food security. So that means that we need to have a clear action plan in deploying these methods.
Yes, there will be an action plan, and I understand that pesticides is very dangerous for the environment, and we're all moving to a greener economy. But to mitigate and to manage these insects, I'm not an insect specialist, but pesticides will be used. I know that they are using them now in the eastern part of Africa, flying with planes, spraying over crop fields just to try and manage or to kill some of the insects or the locusts. So that will be the way forward at this stage, should it happen this side.
All right. And very quickly, food donation. What can we afford to help with as South Africa?
Well, for donations, we have AgriSA has a fund available for donations. We are very excited to get new donors in, and we encourage the public to donate. We have this disaster management fund that we are running. So if some disasters come up during the course of the year, in the future, we kindly encourage corporates and the public sector to donate to us, and then we'll make sure that it gets to the right people.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. AgriSA Risk Manager, Andrea Campher.